Introducing Kraftur, the latest plugin from Soundtheory. Kraftur means power or strength, and that's exactly what it can add to your incoming audio. It can make your mix sound more full and dense, and you can also use it creatively to add saturation and distortion. Let's take a look at the user interface and learn more about Kraftur. Click on the Kraftur logo to see information about your version, as well as visual settings for dynamic range and the color scheme. There are quite a few color schemes, so be sure to download the free trial to test them out. Moving on to the main display, Kraftur shows the input and output peak histograms. The x-axis along the bottom shows the input peak histograms, and the y-axis along the right shows the output peak histograms. Before we continue, let's explain what a histogram represents. If we consider this grayscale image with pixel values from 0 to 255, the histogram shows how many pixels fall into a certain grayscale bin. Now, if we overexpose or saturate the grayscale image, watch what happens to the corresponding histogram. Notice how the information bunches up and moves to a different grayscale value bin. This is analogous to what Kraftur can do in the audio domain, except instead of grayscale bins for the image processing, Kraftur essentially works with loudness bins represented as full-scale decibels. Depending on your settings, you can increase the perceived loudness of your signal, but you can also creatively add saturation and distortion. Let's start with the drive parameter. Drive shifts the input histograms to the left or to the right, depending on the drive value. The white line is the transfer curve. As you get closer to this nonlinear inflection point, the input peak histograms experience more saturation. You can visualize this saturation by looking at the input band meters along the bottom. The saturated audio is visually saturated in the band meters. The knee and offset parameters adjust the transfer curve shape. Knee adjusts the curve near the saturation region, while offset influences a broader segment of the curve. Together, these adjustments allow for a more soft or hard transient processing. The low, mid, and high band shifts enable the user to selectively process each band separately with its own transfer curve. For example, if I want to maintain the low end and saturate the mid and high bands, I would adjust them like this. I can also link the bands together and move them as one. You can adjust the frequency crossovers at the top of the display by clicking and dragging to the left or to the right. You can also solo a band by clicking on the corresponding color. Kraftur can be bypassed with the built-in bypass button. This is a true bypass and slightly different than using the 100% dry signal. Because Kraftur increases the perceived loudness, we also provide a match button for loudness matching. Use the match and bypass buttons to compare your original and processed audio. But when you are ready to commit, be sure to disengage the match button, as it is a dynamic process. Kraftur also features an output section with a clip button, clip ceiling, and output gain. These can be adjusted to the appropriate headroom that you desire after Kraftur linearly combines the audio paths. Kraftur has 3 audio paths: dry, single band, and multiband, represented in the red triangle. Unlike other plugins with only a dry-wet control, Kraftur can seamlessly blend between the 3 different audio paths. Let's solo the drums and dial in a Kraftur setting that adds saturation to our mids and highs while maintaining the low end. I'll start by engaging the match parameter to compensate for any volume differences. Let's see how the drive parameter changes the drum sound. Let's solo the low band and adjust the low shift slider. Notice how the low histograms are highlighted, and we can see how the input peaks reflect off the transfer curve and towards the output histogram. With this information, we can adjust the low transfer curve to make sure the histogram remains in the linear region, experiencing little to no saturation. Next, we'll solo the midband and increase the mid-shift slider so that I can saturate the snare. We'll do a similar process on the high band. Notice how you can really hear Kraftur saturating those transients. Let's listen to all three bands now. If we adjust the blend between dry and multiband, we can choose how much of the effect we want to blend in. We can even add some single band as well. And finally, let's disengage the match button. Now we get that extra loudness that Kraftur can seamlessly provide. If it's too loud, we can adjust the gain parameter, which is static compared to the more dynamic match button. You can really hear how the snare and cymbals get a nice color, while the low-end content is enforced but not distorted. Let's also check the CPU load of Kraftur. On this particular machine, Kraftur's CPU load is reasonable, around 5 to 10% as reported by the DAW. We are modeling a continuous time process, and because of our high internal sampling rate, we are able to eliminate latency. The latency as reported by the DAW is 0 milliseconds. Kraftur is available right now at soundtheory.com. Be sure to check out the free trial of Kraftur, and thanks for watching this video.